So would you take £1 million or
No.
being a partner?
Definitely partner.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
What are you going to do with $1 million? With a partner, there's a lot you can do.
Really?
Yeah, you have influence, you can make things happen, you can do interesting things with clients, you can take the firm in new directions. I get to continue working with you in this capacity. There's a lot you can do in partnership.
Yeah, but like a startup would be, I don't know.
But that's my point. If it was going to be startup, then it would need to be like sufficient funding to like properly get it going.
Okay, so what's your number?
Oh.
If I wrote you a blank check for...
And said, off you go.
Yep.
Do your thing. 5?
5.
5.
So you'd do a startup.
5 is enough for like to screw it up once and I'm still giving it another go.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, so 5 is your number.
Yeah.
I'd do it for $1 million.
Yeah?
Yeah, like a blank check, $1 million. I can, like a bunch of developers and take an idea and bring it to market.
Okay.
Because your multiple is, you know, if you're really successful, you're going to, like the equity is going to translate.
Yeah. I wonder if that's the kind of, you know, the American side of the Atlantic versus the European side and the risk appetite.
Yeah.
And being in California too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I mean, to generalize broadly, I would say that's probably true because I think certainly I have that influence of taking that big risk.
Yeah.
So I can be bought out for $1 million.
Yeah.
Apparently.
I'm going to go find somebody to write you a check tonight. That's my goal.
That's your goal.
I'm going to talk to all the VCs. Said $1 million bucks.
But you have
get
to have the
Elouise
right
going.
idea. Like I haven't landed on what the right idea would be because as we track this market, there's billions, 4 billion, 5 billion, I don't know how many $1 billion of investment and a lot of ideas out there. So I would want to do something net new, different, and I haven't found that yet. In fact, actually, I was approached by 2 founders that recently sold, and they were asking me what's next and what other ideas are, and I was struggling to come up with ideas for them.
Yeah. But you know, the thing that we've been talking a little bit previously is around how procurement has been professionalizing and, you know, year on year gets better in my view in terms of its capability, visibility within the business, professionalization of the function. But it kind of feels a bit the same wherever you go.
Yeah.
But businesses aren't the same. They operate in different industries, different ecosystems, they have different strategic objectives, different pressures. And so shouldn't procurement look a little bit different to hit on those objectives?
Yeah.
And so imagine a world where procurement was set up specifically to co-deliver on those strategic objectives of the organization and everything about it. You know, the digital infrastructure, the people mindsets, the competencies and capabilities.
Well, I agree with you. I would actually frame it slightly differently and say that procurement is part of the business. We are the business. We're not or to say it differently, we are the business. And it's not so much being invited to be at the table. We're critical to it. What I'm curious, though, about is that I think there's going to be a big consolidation, and you're starting to see private equity money come into startups. I think you're starting to see startups exit or make transitions. So I do think there's going to be a lot of shakeup in the market and changes in the ProcureTech market.
I think that's right. We've gone through a period of, over the last 10 years, amazing proliferation where we went from a few suite solutions, which we all know and are familiar with, but they've had their time.
Yes.
And now there's been amazing boom of like an explosion, flowering of many, many, many startups. And it feels like we're reaching a point where some of that will continue, but some are starting to consolidate.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if that pace of consolidation is going to accelerate, actually, to the point where we kind of end up in 5 years with kind of a smaller footprint in terms of number of providers in this space.
Oh, absolutely, we have to. It'll be smaller. But it won't gravitate. I would argue, it won't gravitate to closed-loop suites. I think it still stays in a platform. Fewer providers do more. I just don't think there's going to be a fire hose of cash spraying money everywhere. 5 million to you, 1 million to me.
Yeah.
I think you're a better negotiator than I am. But I think we have to, I think it's going to, I do agree it's going to contract a bit. But also keep in mind, sales and commercial had a 10-year, 15-year boom of innovation, and they're still having innovation.
Yeah.
And even now you're getting challengers to Salesforce. So that's happening too. So I think it goes in waves, and we will get the contraction, but then new startups will come. I still think there's plenty of greenfield, though. I think there's no doubt in my mind there's plenty of greenfield.
Just got to have the idea.
Well, and also, too, think about this. When I started, in 2000, procurement was barely a function. I mean, it was a function, but, it's kind of come about in the 90s as sort of cost control, 3 bids and a buy. And it's now evolved. It kind of went through this phase of total cost of ownership, and now it's moved into sort of driving value, the sort of being value orchestrators around ESG, risk, resiliency, innovation, and so forth. So we are now with just in short 20 years, let's call it 25 years, we've gone from really almost a no-name function to what I would again argue as we're talking, we are the business. We are as much a part of the business as the engineers.
Absolutely. I mean, I fully agree with that. Procurement's, spotlight's firmly on us and on procurement. Everything that's happening in the world right now has a big procurement implication.
Yeah.
The war in Ukraine and the implications of that on energy, commodity shortages, the inflation surge that we're seeing as a result of kind of fiscal loosening, the war for talent. Everywhere you look, anything that's happening, each mega trend, organizations are looking for procurement for a take on how to solve for it.
Right, exactly. And it's hard because we don't have a playbook or a roadmap for this kind of environment, because most of us in our history have not dealt with a war in continental Europe, not at the size of with the players involved. Most of us, we've gone through various periods of inflation, but not coming off a pandemic. Almost nobody has lived through a pandemic prior to 2020. Yeah. So we are in a world that has completely and totally changed. Yeah. So I mean, of course we're being asked to do this, but without any experience. We're like making this up as we go.
Yeah. It feels like a generational opportunity for procurement to kind of grab this by the horns and make the most of it, to not only solve for the business problems, but elevate the function, because that requires a step change in capability too.
No doubt. In fact, that if there was a way to industrialize that talent change, that's the startup I would do. Because I think the talent, it is I agree, it's a total generational change. It's a once-in-a-generation moment.
Okay.
And I think that the capability uplift in procurement is probably the biggest challenge. I actually think the startups have done an amazing job pushing that agenda and driving us there and giving us that foundation. But now we need the same thing on the
maybe that's your idea. Maybe it's the Oxford, the Cambridge, the London Business School, the Harvard of procurement talent.
Well, exactly. I mean, that's my idea. And I only need $1 million for it. Who would I have as a co-founder? Well, certainly I would co-found with you.
I was going to say that, so thank you.
Because we work well together.
Yes.
There are quite a number of people I admire in the procurement world. There are some sort of CPOs or senior leaders or emerging leaders that if they were willing to leave, I would consider working with them or putting on a board, which is inspiring, actually, because that means they've stepped out of the realm of status quo. I don't know, who'd you put on your board? Or co-founder?
Look, I know you're a big believer in diversity, so am I, and so I think I would want a mix of people. Absolutely, people in procurement like you that kind of lead in this space and serve as inspiration as well as kind of providing expertise. But I think I would want a mix. I would want folks who have been on this journey and scale startups and instill discipline as well, I hear Sheryl Sandberg's back on the market. So maybe give Sheryl a call and see if she's up for it.
Maybe sure.
But also, I would want representation from other regions. If you think about, where the growth is coming from in the next 10, 20 years, you look to the global south,
Yep.
South America, Africa. I think there's a very interesting demographic and opportunity there. So I would representation from that part of the world for sure.
I would want, on my board, I would want Mark Benioff, because what he did with Salesforce was very clever. I've gone back in my research and read some of his early books and sort of his charting he sort of documented what he was doing at the time, not knowing it would be as successful as it became a juggernaut. And because when I was writing my book, I actually was going to put a footnote in, a note to Mark if he actually read my book, and I was going to send him a copy, but I thought it would be kind of too cheesy. But I do think that he had a very clever way of disrupting the CRM market, and I think that would be very, very useful for sort of whatever we do. Yeah. So. I can tell you who would not be on my board.
Go for it.
Elon Musk.
Why would Elon not be on your board?
Like, he's got Bond villain written all over him. Like, I saw that somewhere, and it's like every day it seems like he's trying to be a villain.
Yes, okay, I understand that, and I might agree to some extent. But I know that, your mission around this $1 million startup isn't going to just be around procurement. You want to change the world.
Oh, undoubtedly,
You want to change the world. And Elon is changing the world.
And
beyond.
Yes, but the question is he doing it ethically? Like, this whole ESG dust-up is, okay, yes, he's creating greener cars, but at what expense? If you go deep in the Tesla supply chain and find, I'm not saying that it's there, but if you find that there's forced labor or unfair wage or human rights violations, does that balance the greenness of the car? Like how do you balance that? And I think, well, yes, you can look at the oil and gas companies being in the S&P ESG and Tesla sort of getting balanced, but that's a headline. That's a talking point, and I think you have to be more critical about that, because there is a trade-off between human rights and emissions from a car.
Yeah.
And I think he distilled it down to a soundbite, tweeted it out, and so I think the situation way more nuanced than he made it. Yeah. So I appreciate his approach and his style, but I don't think that's...
He's not getting an invite.
No, and it's not productive.
Yeah.
I get it. I see what he's doing, but it's not productive because these issues are complicated. ESG is complicated, so you can't just fire out. So,
yeah.
If I could go back in history and get one person on my board, it would be Steve Jobs. I love everything. I mean, the fact that so many of you see these clips on YouTube and LinkedIn and Facebook, he's still influencing people all these years later. Yeah. So,
you've given me an idea of who from history I would like. I would like somebody from that General Motors team.
Oh, yes.
That original sourcing.
Yeah.
7 steps.
Yeah.
Having a strategy, a category strategy, understanding your spend, working with the business, going to market. Many companies still struggle with that today, and they're the ones that cracked it.